So I decided to do a bonus episode and more so short video of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Explained this week, and I know there was supposed to be a second ranking in the next video, but my good friend Darren over from the Pipeline podcast showed me some articles where the current head of Marvel TV called Brad Winderbaum from this month and last month that I completely missed and didn't see at all, where he directly talks about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and its canon status within the MCU for one of the first times ever, and he actually sounded kind of positive about it because he's talked about canon stuff in the past. He's been really kind of focused on Daredevil and stuff like that before in the Netflix shows, and he's talked about them, but he's never really mentioned the ABC shows or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or anything related to that, which he did here. But before we jump straight into that, this is episode 6 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Explained, a series I'm doing every week where I pick a topic or discussion from the show and make a video on it. And the playlist is linked in the description if you want to check out those other 5 videos. There's going to be more coming out. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. If you're not new, a like and a share always helps to push the video out in front of the YouTube algorithm, because they really do bank on those like and shares to really get people to see those videos. Anyway, Brad Winderbaum is currently overseeing all of the current Marvel TV shows like Daredevil, Born Again, and a lot of the Disney Plus stuff is directly under his view. And he was one of the more positive and optimistic people in the past about Daredevil and the prior Netflix shows and how they attached to the canon. Even though we kind of knew it was for sure canon, he was the one saying that he believed they are, when a lot of the other Marvel execs were like, yeah, we'll see what happens. Brad was kind of the guy being like, oh no, to me, they're canon. And then the Daredevil Born Again show went through tons of changes to line up with the original show, and we got official confirmation from like Disney Plus, from Peggy, from everyone, that Daredevil seasons 1 through 3 and all those other Netflix shows are officially canon and fully canon to the new MCU. But recently, Brad Winderbaum was doing press and interviews for What If Season 3, which came out in the last week of December 2024. And in an interview for Screen Rant, he brought up both Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter, and he said this. Well, I'll tell you this, and put it to you like this. It's exciting for me to think about how to square those ABC shows with the canon. ABC shows meaning Agent Carter, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and technically Inhumans. That to me, if you know me and the way my brain works, that is fun territory to imagine. And then Screen Rant, the person who was interviewing Brad said, well, I have a list that breaks down episodically where it would fit into the MCU, so I'll send it to you after this. And Brad said, I need it. I'm assuming that list is things like, make sure you watch certain episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. after certain movies or something like that to see how they all tie in. Anyway, this does kind of sound pretty great to me. You can wave this away as being usual corporate non-answers and like usual Marvel's way of not really answering the question, but sort of dancing around it. But to me, this sounds more positive than usual because it's the fact he's thinking about the ABC shows like this. And to me, this sounds like similar rhetoric and things we were hearing from him in the months before Daredevil and Punisher and Defenders and Iron Fist and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage were all confirmed to be canon, where it was this similar kind of talking about how himself and Marvel are trying to find out where to fit those pieces and shows in canon and where it works and how it might work and all that sort of stuff. I am surprised he said ABC instead of just Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. though, because Agent Carter had direct involvement from Feige, the screenwriters and directors of Winter Soldier, Civil War, Endgame, Infinity War. So Agent Carter has always seemed more on the in-canon no matter what way you look at it debate, while S.H.I.E.L.D. has always kind of been more of an argument and a discussion. But I think this is important because Brad is the person who really could decide on the future of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters in the MCU if he wanted to. Like if he put his foot down and wanted to push a lot of this stuff through, he probably could. But also because the way he mentions this sounds more like someone who actually is thinking about this. Like the way he says it's exciting to find a way to square the shows being canon, it sounds more like actual, yeah, we're working on it, we're having discussions about it, than a lot of what the Marvel people have said in the past, which when asked similar questions, they just say, yeah, we'll see. Or like we've heard Feige a bunch of times talk and dance around this sort of topic where he's asked something about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. being canon and his answer is the equivalent of saying how he loves the show and he loves the work or whatever, and that's it. He would never go as far as saying he'd see where they fit in canon. He just would ignore it completely, and he would never say that he's thinking about them being canon, which is sort of what Brad says here. Feige would be more so like very corporately saying, yeah, they're good shows, we love them, and leave it at that. Now, you can look at Brad's comments here as being pretty corporate. To be fair, he doesn't explicitly say Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is canon, and you can look at this as him maybe dancing around the topic a little bit in ways other Marvel people have, but I genuinely read this a bit differently. Just based off of Brad's push for the Netflix shows to be folded into in the past and into the main MCU canon, I get the feeling he is actively trying to make things work for S.H.I.E.L.D. 2. He seems like somebody who cares about the fan bases of the older shows in a way that a lot of other Marvel execs haven't really given a shit about, unfortunately. But you do get the feeling here that Brad is actively trying to make things work for S.H.I.E.L.D. the way it did for Daredevil. And the unfortunate truth is that to people like Feige, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is probably a much harder sell to him than properly bringing Daredevil into canon was, because S.H.I.E.L.D. actively played in the playground set up by the MCU, including characters, tying in, doing their own multiverse and time travel stories. Feige might be looking at S.H.I.E.L.D. as harder to fit into his depiction of what the MCU is than, say, Daredevil, which was completely in its own corner of New York City and dealing with very grounded conflicts. I've also I don't know the guy, but just based off of interviews and stuff, I've always personally gotten the vibe that Kevin Feige has been the real person standing in the way of any official inclusion of Marvel TV shows in the MCU. It's always felt like he didn't directly involve himself in it, then it didn't count to him in his head. Like if he didn't have a hand in creating or writing or directing or producing one of the Marvel shows, he didn't consider it part of his canon. And I know there's a lot of drama between the various older heads of Marvel TV. That a lot of stuff went on in the past between them. Some of the people running Marvel TV were assholes and wanted to remove themselves from the main MCU in a lot of ways, cut a lot of ties. But I think Feige definitely has that mindset of it's MCU if I'm involved in it some way, if I've had a hand in overseeing it somehow, if no matter what form that takes, where it's an executive producer or producer, whatever. It feels like he needs to be involved in it for it to fit into his idea of what the MCU is. And I feel like to him, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. might be a harder sell to fit into what his MCU is than Daredevil is. But I feel like Brad might genuinely be fighting for that a little bit. Like Brad might be really working to change that. He already has slightly with the Netflix stuff, and now he's working hard on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. too. But how do you feel about these comments? How do you view them? Is anything here important and worthwhile listening to, or is this more of the same stuff we've been hearing for years now? Let me know. And if you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. If you are subscribed, make sure to like and share. It's always a huge help. Thank you so much for watching, and have an amazing day.